I'm especially a fan of the two writers that I get the honor to share the stage with today. I believe that they are making the world a little bit more accepting, a little bit more compassionate, a lot more informed, and I am so honored to be here with you two today. Thank you for being here. Last October, I got the privilege to travel to Cambridge to actually do this same interview with them on their book tour. Mad Honey has spent over 6 months on the New York Times bestseller list. It tackles enough subjects for a library of books, but what it really does is change opinions, create empathy, and connect us, all aspects found in the transformative power of literature that we exemplify here with the Nantucket Book Foundation. Our first author, Professor Jennifer Finney Boylan, author of 18 books, is the inaugural Anna Quindlen Writer-in-Residence at Barnard College of Columbia University. She serves on the Board of Trustees of PEN America, the nonprofit advocating for authors, readers, and freedom of expression. From 2011 to 2018, she served on the Board of Directors of GLAAD. She was co-chair of GLAAD's Board of Directors from 2013 to 17. She also is a member of the faculty of the Breadloaf Writers Conference of Middlebury College and the Siren Land Writers Conference in Positano, Italy. Her 2003 memoir, She's Not There, A Life in Two Genders, was the first best-selling work by a transgender American. A novelist, memoirist, and short story writer, she's also a nationally known advocate for human rights. She lives in New York City and Belgrade's Lakes, Maine, with her wife, Didi, who is also here, and they have 2 children. Jodi Picoult is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of 28 novels, including Wish You Were Here, The Book of Two Ways, A Spark of Light, Small Great Things, plus my personal favorites, 19 Minutes, Second Glance, and Lone Wolf. Picoult's books have been translated into 34 languages in 35 countries. Her 2 young adult novels, Between the Lines and Off the Page, co-written with her daughter, Samantha Van Leer, have been adapted and developed by the authors into a musical entitled Between the Lines, which had its world premiere in September 2017 at the Kansas City Repertory Theater, and premiered off-Broadway in summer 2019. Jodi also co-wrote the book to adapt The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak into a musical, and it will be presented in the UK this September and October. Jodi lives in New Hampshire with her husband Tim and 2 dogs. They have 3 children and just welcomed a grandson into their world. And their grandparents' names are Lolly and Pop, and I think that's about the cutest thing I've heard. Please welcome Jodi Picoult and Jennifer Finney Boylan. Hello, my friends.
Hello.
Hi, Tim.
How
Hi.
are you?
We're
We are
great.
good.
I'm gonna start with the thing that I call the tweet heard round the world, and it's the story of how you two connected to write this book together. So Jenny, start us off with your dream and a
Okay,
tweet.
True story. May 2017, I had a dream. I was co-authoring a book with Jodi Picoult. That was it. I woke up, I was like, what? Because Jodi and I had never met. I'd read her books, I'd loved her books. I was a fan, but you know, we didn't know each other. We were on author Twitter together, which used to be a thing. And so I got up.
Back when Twitter was a thing.
Yeah, and I got up and I got some coffee and I thought, that was, what that's weird. And the dream was, there were these 2 voices, the young woman who'd been murdered, and then the other voice was the mom of her boyfriend who'd been accused of the crime. And it was just very specific, and it just kind of freaked me out a little. So I went on Twitter. I was, online in the morning, and I tweeted out, I just dreamed I was co-authoring a book with @Jodi Picoult, who, meanwhile, in New Hampshire, happened to be online at that very moment and, sent me a message that said, what was this book about? And I said what I just said to you, and she said, actually, what did you say?
OMG, let's do it.
OMG, let's do it.
Did you have to find out what it was going to be about first, or did you just
No,
agree?
she told me what it was going to be about.
And I believe my response was, you nut, we have everything but the plot.
Yep.
Okay, well, go on. How did that process work? Like how, it was during the pandemic, right? So you had to do it from your...
Yeah, so we were both really busy. We had other books under contract, and we didn't expect to even meet to talk about the book until September 2020. And then in March 2020, Jenny wrote me an email and said, I don't know about you, but my schedule just cleared. And so we basically got together online and FaceTimed and talked about what the plot of the book could be. And we wound up, we knew that we were going to split it in a certain way, so that I was mostly going to write the chapters of the mom of the boy who is accused of murder, and Jenny was mostly going to write the chapters that are about the girl who has been killed. And
then Jodi got the idea that my chapters would go backwards in time. And I said,
I got that
did you do
idea.
that?
Thanks,
Did you already
Jodi.
do a time?
And why?
Yes.
And why was it your idea that I would have to do that?
So
Why,
that
Jodi?
I don't, because I've done it and
So
it's
you're
terrible.
smart.
And it's
Yes,
terrible.
Yeah. So
Thanks, Jodi.
yeah. But I knew she could.
She
do
said,
it.
"Don't worry, you'll do it."
Yeah, and she did. She pulled it off great. So honestly, it was just a matter of us trying to figure out kind of what we were like as writers, because we are very different kinds
very different
of
as
writers.
writers.
Like for example,
For example.
I am a plotter, and Jenny is what is called a pantser.
No one calls it that. Except
Everyone
you.
calls it a pantser.
No one calls
Everybody,
it that.
yes.
No.
So there are other authors in this audience. Are there not
You-
pantsers?
you-
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
A
So-
pantser?
Yeah.
Really?
So what that means
You're
is
one of her. That's a shill. That's a plant.
that means that you fly by the seat of your pants, right? And when
That
you're
means you're a miner. You're looking for the gold of the story.
Okay, here's the problem. We were writing a mystery, and as Jenny has pointed out, you can't get to the end and go, I don't know who did it. Yeah. So,
How would I know?
right. So you actually have to figure out where you're going in advance. And so I did manage to convince Jenny to write a very, very detailed plot outline, which is what we worked
Well,
from.
we had to do that.
Yeah. And the whole thing was written over the course of the pandemic. And basically, I would write a chapter, I'd kick it back to Jenny. Jenny would edit my chapter very heavily and
them
send
better.
it back. Yeah, make them much better. Yeah. And then
Because
Jenny.
you need so much help, Jodi.
Girls, you're
Before you met me,
Girls,
you were really
you're
a
both
failure
Pretty. You're both pretty.
as a writer.
Well, no, but the reason I say that is because one of the comments that we get the most about this book is that it doesn't sound like it was written by two people. And I think the reason for that is because we were playing in the sandbox together the whole time.
Yeah.
We had our hands and our fingerprints all over each other's chapters.
Jodi, you've written so many books by yourself on so many different subjects. What made you decide that this one you didn't want to just tell by yourself?
So there's a lot of issues at play in this book. This book thematically is very much about how the past informs our present and what parts of the past you have to continue to carry with you, like an albatross around your neck as you move into the future. And there are many different examples of that and it's embodied in different ways through different characters. And there is a trans element in this book. And
It's me.
That's you. Yeah. And
The trans element.
That sounds like a really bad sci-fi film,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, the trans element.
Boom.
But I'm not trans, right? Settled, right?
This is settled.
Yeah, okay. So I will say this. There's been a little bit of a controversy this week because Elizabeth Gilbert decided to pull her own book because of the criticism of a few people who were upset that apparently it had the word Russia in it or something like that. And I think that takes us back to the idea of who has the right to write anything. I personally believe any writer has the right to write whatever they want to as long as they do the topic justice by doing the research, by making sure that you are being representative of whatever you're writing about and that you've talked to people who have experienced what you're writing about. That said, you also as a writer need to ask yourself, why is this my story to write? And if you can't answer that, you should not be writing that book. So for me, when Jenny wrote me out of the blue and said, hey, I want to write this book, and I'm thinking there's like this trans element in it, that's something I had wanted to write about for a long time, but that is not a life that I have lived. And yet, I can tell you what it's like to be someone cisgender in this world who is wondering, I don't know what questions to ask. Am I allowed to ask questions? What does it really mean to be trans? How do I do that? How do I negotiate this unknown space? And I thought that it would be a terrific opportunity for both of us to bring our points of view to the story. We're two women in America with really different experiences of being a woman in America. And I knew that that had never been done before. And that was why I wanted to write it with her.
What did you learn from each other about being writers, other than pantser and plotter? And then my second question is, what did you learn about each other about being a woman? Because Mad Honey really celebrates women. Jenny.
The main thing I learned, is that Jodi Picoult is like the most generous writer in America, that she welcomed me, and we're very different writers. She's a very commercial writer. I'm a literary writer, although, again, I think both of us keep wanting to break down the wall between that. And, you know, commercial writers, you know, get all the love, but, you know, literary writers get all the reviews.
Yeah.
You know.
Do we get love? Really?
You get love.
Some of the love.
Look at all these people. You
All
get
right.
love.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't think that's where you're going with that question, but I will say that Jodi welcomed me as a sister, and literally because of a dream I had, Jodi Picoult, who I did not know, who is a very different kind of writer than I, welcomed me, became my friend, became my sister, became my collaborator. And that is pretty cool. And in a way, what I learned is trust your dreams. Sometimes.
Wow.
Trust your dreams.
I learned a lot about the process of writing for myself. You know, when you're writing a novel alone, you don't sit there and think, how do I make the sausage? You just make the sausage, right? You don't analyze the process very much. But when you're working with someone, you do have to analyze the process, because our processes were very, very different, and we had to figure out a way to bring them together. And what I learned is that Jenny drafts on the page. So she will go through multiple incarnations of drafts, you know, before she gets to the one that is kind of in the place that we can start to address it.
You know, and Jodi does it all basically in her head. Well, you do all the research, and then and she would send me a chapter, and like bang, that was kind of it. Whereas I'd have to do 4 or 5 drafts, and then I'd send it to Jodi.
But it made me realize that I do the drafting in my head.
Yeah.
And I do it.
I would do that. I just can't remember anything.
But it's like, it's mindless. It's when I'm in the shower. It's when I'm swimming. It's when I'm hiking. Like, that's what I'm doing in the back of my head. And I didn't know that about myself. So that was really cool.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And in terms of what I learned about being a woman is that Jenny has an unerring faith in the goodness of people. I do not. I'm much meaner than Jenny. Like, really, she always gives people the, it's true. I'm out there. She always gives people the benefit of the doubt. And that is just a really beautiful place to be, given that she has not always been given the benefit of the doubt herself.
Yes.
You never said that before. I feel like that's weird because I don't think of myself that way. I feel like I've been smacked around a lot, you know.
Right, but I
as
think,
a transgender person,
yeah,
like
that's
every
what
day
I
I wake up. Well, I had to turn off the news as we were driving to Hyannis today, because it was just one horrible story after another about, you know, people like me not being basically allowed to be citizens of this country. And I was like, I just said to Didi, can we please not listen to this? And, you know, I mean, you've been people have messed with you in different ways. Like, who's got 18 banned books now?
23.
Jodi Picoult.
Who's counting?
Yeah, okay.
Yes. No, but
No one had never banned a book of mine before I met you, Jodi.
I'm just the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, it is, really.
But, you know, but that's what I mean. We did this one interview in Ireland. Well, we weren't in Ireland. We were in England, but it was an Irish, like, radio interview, right?
Yeah.
And for some reason, we had to be on 2 different devices. So I'm in one room, like, on a phone, and Jenny was on Zoom in another room. And this presenter in Ireland kept referring to her, and I'm not making this up, as the trans.
Not the trans. Well,
The trans. Oh, the trans.
What's the trans?
And
What
I
does
was
that be in the trans? Will you not stop being the trans?
Right. And so, and literally, I'm not with her, so I can't see her face. And I'm like, I finally go, you have to stop saying that. Yeah. So.
Oh my gosh. Sorry about that.
Well, and the Irish are very progressive too, so I was just completely, you know, flabbergasted.
Perfect segue, though. Jenny, when did you come out? What year?
About 2000, more or less.
How has it changed, and watching it in society? You and I were
It's
talking.
funny because on the one hand, when I came out in around 2000, you know, people didn't like you're what? So I remember someone asking me, "Does this mean you're like super gay?" And I was like, my first thought was, well, no, and then I was like, yeah, actually, I am super gay.
Where's my cape?
Yeah, where's my freaking cape? That's every day I ask myself. So in some ways it was harder because no one knew what I was talking about. And yet, also, the first reaction, most people were like, well, you have a medical condition, clearly it's something that you were born with, something maybe it's neurological, probably, which I think it is. So what do you do when you respond to someone in that situation, but you respond with love and kindness? And so mostly, certainly in my hometown, my little hometown in Maine, which is not exactly, it's a conservative little town, but people were nice. People greeted me with love, mostly. And so now, 25 years later, plus or minus, in some ways it's easier because the path is blazed. I'm not the only transgender person in America, which I was for 10 years, or it felt that way to me. And yet, at the same time, now with increased visibility, now there's increased blowback. And ever since the overturn of Roe v. Wade last summer, I think certain people have found that beating up people like me, a very small, misunderstood minority, is kind of the easy way to kind of fan the flames. And so with increased visibility has come increased blowback, and now it's getting, it's just worse and worse. Each day seems like it's twice as bad as the day before. But, we're going to fight back, and we're going to fight back through visibility. But how do you fight back? One way you fight back is through stories, and that's, and again, back to the magic of Jodi Picoult. I've written books about trans experience before. This time, I reached a lot more readers. Thanks,
Needed
Jodi.
to hear it.
Yeah, thanks, Jodi.
So I think that has to do with society's obsession with gender. And your first sentence is, I love a first sentence. I always ask questions about a first sentence because I feel like a little extra time is poured into that first sentence. And yours, you both have one. From the moment I knew I was having a baby, I wanted it to be a girl. And Jenny, yours is from the moment my parents knew they were having a baby, my father wanted me to be a boy. Whenever someone's pregnant, one of the first questions is, what are you having? Why does society have such a strict definition and question about gender? And why are they only putting it in 2 boxes?
Because that's exactly it. We like things that fit neatly into boxes. And when we can't fit something into a box, it makes us itchy. And it's really relearning, sort of the definition of what gender is. The thing that I was taught, people say this all the time, sex is between your legs, gender is between your ears, right? So that is really hard for people as old as me to wrap their heads around. Thank goodness for today's high school kids who are playful and joyful and accepting of gender differences. I think they're going to lead the way, which I think is really, really important. But I think it's not that all of a sudden there are so many people who are non-binary, for example, or trans. I think we didn't have vocabulary to describe that experience. And even, friends of mine who are trans, it wasn't until they started hearing that term that they realized, that's what I am. Sometimes we don't have the language to describe even who we are. Yeah. And so I feel in that way, sort of the English language in society has caught up a little bit. But we are obsessed with it because it's hard to fit into 2 boxes. Yeah. And we've been taught for years it's supposed to be 2 boxes.
Jenny, any thoughts?
I was thinking about those 2 sentences that the first time I knew about those sentences, Jodi mailed me that first chapter. And I was like, yikes. Okay.
Wait, yikes, what?
Yikes.
Like in a good way?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, but the process of writing together was very much like, okay, I'll see you and raise you one.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah.
I didn't know.
Totally.
No, literally. I didn't know. I didn't know how.
It totally was.
It was kind of like that. And so, because Jodi's this breaking news, Jodi's really good. And so I was like, okay, well, we've got 2 voices. My first sentence has got to meet that and answer it. So it wasn't like we planned to do two parallel sentences. That Jodi did that, and I was like, oh, well, that's really good. So.
But the moment she did it, I was like, yeah. She's got this. Yeah.
But I love that you said itchy, because I feel like there are probably people in America that read this book that they got itchy about it.
Oh, yes.
I want to have. I'm going to make T-shirts, I think.
I'm itchy?
Jodi and Jenny make me a cheat.
All right.
I wanted to ask, if positive and negative, did you hear, was there hate mail? Was there blowback at your tour? Was there anything like that?
On the tour, things were fine, actually. It was great.
Yeah, there's been a lot of troublesome mail. And,
Yeah.
And I mean, I think, well, I think
comes
we
to me,
both
yeah.
are so used to always getting that.
Yeah.
And when I used to write pieces for the Times every 2 weeks, I had a gig where I was writing columns for the Times every 2 weeks, and you would not believe the things people would send to me. I had a thing in the Washington Post a month ago about whether or not being trans is about the brain, and that piece appeared at 7 in the morning on a Monday morning, and by 5 p.m. there were 7,500 comments in one day, and shockingly, not all of them were generous.
So
And shockingly, many of those were clearly people who had not read the piece.
just this morning, I received an email from a woman who said, you used to be my favorite author, used to be my favorite author, until you used this book to write a victimization soliloquy. And how dare you use bees to do it? Signed, Beekeeper Barbara. So I wrote back. Because
Sounds hideous.
yeah, I write everybody back. And I do it because I think people sometimes think when you send an email to an author, it's going into a void. And I want you to know I read it and you are accountable for those words.
We read them.
Yeah. And so I wrote back and I said to her, it's really interesting that you used that term and didn't specify what it was about the book that was so upsetting to you. But I did notice that you chose to send this email to me and not to me and my co-author. And I wonder if perhaps it's her very existence that upsets you. I said, as for the bees, they are a female-run society. Why wouldn't I use them? But I will say, those emails have been a tiny fraction of what at least I've received. Most of the emails I get are so beautiful, are not just, oh my God, I love this book, I was on the edge of my seat, but wow, now I know exactly what to say to my trans grandson. Or you made me understand this in a way I never could, before. I've had trans people write, and I'm sure you have too, saying, I'm using this, I'm giving it to my parents because they just don't understand.
Well, that's what we wanted. The thing around trans issues right now is that there's a lot of queer people for whom trans issues are very esoteric and advanced, and there's this kind of complex language around speaking around trans and non-binary and genderqueer identities. And then there's like everybody else who's like people who want to catch up, but who didn't grow up with this, who don't know how to have the conversation, who don't even know what is this? Are you super gay? Is that the? Yeah. So what we wanted to do, it was to enable, to provide like the vocabulary for people to have a conversation. And there's a scene, kind of in the middle of the book where Olivia, the beekeeper,
my
the
character,
mom, meets this kind of out transgender woman. It's kind of just like a big woman with a low voice. She doesn't particularly pass. She has a bad wig, but she lives in this little town, and she's unashamed and proud. And she basically walks Olivia through Trans 101, and Olivia says a few of the wrong things, and
that was really hard for me. I didn't like my character saying the wrong things, but it was important.
Yeah, and so in a way that turned out to be one of the most important chapters in the book, because it kind of invites people who want to understand about the trans thing but who really don't get it to just be welcomed and to be told it's okay if you don't get this. I'm trans, and I didn't get it either for a long time. No, seriously. I was growing up. I was like, God, you want me to do what? Seriously? I don't know.
I can't imagine how many people this book helped. So
can I tell you I don't know if I've told you this, my favorite moment on tour in the US, we were in Seattle, and there was a woman who came up to you and said, this is my first public event as the real me.
Oh, yeah?
Do you remember that?
Right, I remember.
And she said, and again, not particularly passing, very nervous, and she said, Jenny, she said, you have given me the courage to be here tonight.
Oh,
Isn't that the nicest?
I'm going to switch gears back to the bees.
Oh, yeah.
Because
Back to the bees.
I love your books about animals because they can teach us so much about ourselves, I think. What's the most fascinating thing you learned about bees for the
Oh.
research in this book?
Well, okay, so we all.
Taking a little break.
Yeah, this is all me. So we all know that girls run the bee world, right? And so that means that when you go to a hive, every worker bee or forager bee or nurse bee is a female bee. There are male bees in the hive. They're called drones. They do absolutely nothing. They literally deplete the resources, watch football, whatever. And then for one day in their sorry little lives, the day the day that the queen takes her maiden flight, all the drones are like, dude, it's time, come on. And they all fly after her. And the 7 or 8 fastest drones that can get the farthest get to mate with the queen. And when they mate, they mate with her and then they throw themselves backward, and you can audibly hear the click of their genitals snapping off as they fall to their deaths. This is not the most interesting bee fact.
We
however.
told that story somewhere, and a room started to cheer.
Yeah.
By the way.
So, the thing about queen bees is the queen comes home from that day with all of the eggs that are fertilized inside her for the rest of her life, because her only job is to make more bees. But there comes a point where a queen is kind of, not doing her job. She might be old, she might be sick. And at that point, the nurse bees get together and they're like, it's time. And they can create a new queen bee by feeding any egg that's in the cell, in the comb, something called royal jelly, which is like full of all these really cool proteins. Now, a queen will lay both fertilized and unfertilized eggs. If the queen lays a fertilized egg, it becomes a female bee. If she lays an unfertilized egg, it becomes a drone. But these nurse bees can feed either of those royal jelly. If they feed royal jelly to a fertilized egg, then that nurse bee or worker bee or forager bee will become a queen. But if they feed royal jelly to a drone, a male bee, it too becomes a queen.
Wow.
Which is where I came in.
Yeah.
Oh, royal jelly, that's what happened. Now we know.
Oh, my gosh. Jenny,
Royal jelly.
how do I even follow that?
Sorry.
You're not-
Sorry. Moving right along.
Last night, we heard from 4 authors, one of them being Jodi, on the word freedom. And I wanted to get your take on that word.
Well, there's freedom to and there's freedom from. So there's freedom to be the person that you need to be in this world. And sometimes that's easy enough, but for most of us to become the person we need to be is not easy. And part of it is figuring out who it is we need to become and what the obstacles are between us and that person. And much of the adventure and the turmoil of life is about finding your courage to do the thing, to slay the dragon, to get from here to there. And then there's freedom from, which would mean, at the very least, the freedom to be left alone. And there's I'm thinking about trans people in this country. There's a Randy Newman song, an old Randy Newman song, the chorus of which is, if you won't take care of us, it's a prayer. He's saying, Lord, if you won't take care of us, won't you please let us be? And so at this moment in our country's history, I'm like, okay, I know that you don't understand who I am. I know that the challenges that have broken my heart and the hearts of the people around me and the thing I had to do, if you still have no compassion for that, if you have no love in your heart for people like me, if you have no understanding in your brain for people like me, if you just won't reach out and learn about people like me, can you at the very least, I'm turning Irish, can you not do, at the very least, do me the favor of leaving me alone? That's all I really want. Because look, I don't especially want to swim against you competitively. I don't want to, keep your children from playing soccer. I don't want to give hormones to your child. I don't want to do anything. What I want, actually, is to write my books and feed the dog and to be left alone. That's my radical agenda.
Okay. We are moving on to the lightning round. Are we ready?
Yeah.
No. Okay, ask her first.
Favorite book of the year so far?
So I'm going to give you two.
Okay.
One is an old one. It's Circe by Madeline Miller, which was great. I just read it in Greece. I read only things set in ancient Greece. It was so cool. Yeah. And a book that came out last week that is terrific called You Were Always Mine by Christine Pride and Joe Piazza. It's about racism and about who has the right to raise a child. And it's just a great conversation starter.
I think The Candy House by Jennifer Egan, maybe Horse by Geraldine Brooks.
Yes.
One of those two.
Great choices. Do you have a favorite book of each other's?
The Pact, absolutely.
The Longest Veil.
You're good at this.
Wait, what did you say?
The Longest Veil.
No, Long Black Veil.
Long Black-
The
sorry, the
Longest
Long
Veil?
Black-
I never write a book. long Black Veil.
Longest Blood Black Veil.
Okay.
Yeah,
The
sorry.
longest.
Favorite band book?
19 minutes. I wrote it, but I'm allowed to say it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Let me check the rules here.
All right,
Yes.
all right.
Can I say To Kill a Mockingbird? Is that too traditional? Yeah.
No, I like it.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, you two are planning a dinner, and you can pick any writers, dead or alive, to attend. You each get 3. Who are they?
Dorothy
Wait.
Parker.
I have rules. The rule is that we get to have each other no matter what. We don't count.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
Also-
that's
I
4.
have a rule too. I'm going.
Okay, that's 5.
And the third rule, well, besides Santi being there, is that Ina Garden has to cook because she doesn't count, right?
Okay.
Oh, wow.
All right.
I'm definitely
No,
going.
go
And
ahead.
Santi also will definitely have to.
So my party, and what I want is it's not the writers who I think are most complicated and interesting. It's a party, so I want writers who are going to be entertaining. Yeah. So Dorothy Parker.
Okay.
I'm thinking Harpo Marx actually, because he did write and he would talk. Harpo speaks.
I was going to say he's quiet.
Well, no, not at the party. And Emma Strupp.
Oh, that's nice.
Where-
We'd love
wait,
to have
wait,
Emma
wait,
here.
she's up
Yeah,
here
that's
somewhere.
good. So I'm going to invite Michelle Obama because I really
Oh,
want
yeah,
to meet
you
her.
got Michelle Obama.
Well, she's going to be at your party. It's going to be great.
This is
Yeah.
the coolest party in
I
the
know,
whole world.
I know. I'm going to invite my daughter because I came here once and I did an event with her when she was a kid, and Sammy just on her own got a book contract and is writing middle grade, so she gets to
Wow.
come.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
congrats to Sam.
I know, it's very exciting. And I'm going to invite Emilia Bassano, who I bet none of you know.
Well, who's that, Jodi?
Well, I don't know. Is there
Tell
a
us
question
about
about
that.
There is a question
I'll
coming.
wait then. Okay.
Actually, it's the next one. What are you both writing right now?
Well, go. Good.
All right. Well, might I mention that I'm at this book festival and I have 1.5 chapters left in the book that I need to finish. Yeah.
Who do you blame that you're
I
here?
blame you. Yeah. So the book that I'm writing is about a woman named Emilia Bassano in part. Emilia Bassano was the first published female poet in England. She was published in 1611 in her 40s, early 40s. And I am going to convince you in the book that I'm writing right now that Shakespeare did not actually write his plays. That I personally think several people did, but Emilia was very clearly one of them. And I could go into great detail about this.
We can't wait to
Yes.
read.
Have a title yet?
It is called By Any Other Name.
Of course you do. That's a good title.
That's
Nice.
a plotter right there.
In fact, so the new book is about the differences between men and women. It's about the differences, it's a memoir in some ways about my lived experiences, the difference between manhood and womanhood. It's also about the difference between coming out as trans 25 years ago and coming out now. And it's also about the differences between the way conservatives and progressives think of womanhood. That in some ways, to be a woman means something different depending on who is around you and who your cohort is. And the title, Cleavage. And the subtitle is Men, Women, and the Space Between Us. Okay? Nice, right? And
Nailed it.
can I just say that coming down here after we turned off we were in the car going to Hyannis, turned off the radio, looked at my iPhone, and there in the mail was a email from the publisher, Jenny, love the book, we're going to publish it fall of 24.
Amazing.
So
Look for
that was a good
cleavage
drive. That
on
was a good
shelves
drive.
everywhere. I'm going to end with Jodi. I said I love a first sentence, but I also love an acknowledgments page. And I feel like readers maybe sometimes skip it, but I love an acknowledgments page because it's a real connection with the reader and the writer. And this one in the back of Mad Honey, if you didn't read it, please go back because it's perfect. Jodi, you get asked all the time, what are we supposed to take away from the book you just wrote? But you say in the acknowledgments, I don't want you to take anything away. I want you to give something. And what do you mean by that?
I say that instead of taking something away from the book, I hope readers give a thought, a chance, a damn about people who are not the same as them. That's all.
Also, quoting Jodi Picoult in that same note, you said, sometimes making the world a better place is making room
For the people already in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice, right? If you're going to have a co-author, make it Jodi Picoult. Can I just say?
And Jenny, your acknowledgments page makes me tear up every time I think about it. You give us the sign for ASL.
Oh, right.
And I was wondering if you could share that with the group.
Yeah.
To show that we all here give a damn.
Okay. Well, so like I'm gonna guess some other people in this room. I'm super hard of hearing and have these space-age hearing aids. And so after I lost my hearing, which actually happened on a single night, I started trying to learn ASL, and I'm not very good at it at all. But I did learn the ASL for transgender. And actually, the great thing about ASL is that it's this language that evolves. So the old sign used to be like that, so which means, or something like that. So that's the letter X. X down your face was sex, and then if you turn sex around, that's transgender. And in a way, it's a very kind of binary thing, like, sex backwards. I make the Frankenstein sound. And so
You should do sound effects as a second job.
It's been replaced now with this. So what's that? In fact, wait, everybody I'll show you. So make like a little flower, put it over your left breast or chest or whatever you have. And it's going to come out, face the ceiling now. Look, the petals are going to open. Oh, wait, great. And now the petals are going to close. Go back on your heart facing the different direction. Now, let's do it again. Ready? Like that. Flower down. Flower comes out. Ooh, back in like that. Okay, real fast. Ready? You're talking too quickly. I can't understand you when you... But so here's why I love that. So it does mean transgender, but it also means, tell me that there's anyone here who hasn't had something in their heart. This is the English professor now, ready? Like a flower, something in you that was in the dark because it was inside and it could not bloom because you couldn't let it out. And it's, okay, so that's being transgender, but it's everybody. Everyone knows what it's like to be not to be known because you can't, because you're afraid what will happen if you're known. You're afraid that if people knew about that thing in you, that they would be mean to you. They would hurt you. Maybe you would lose your friends, the people that you love. Maybe they would pass laws against allowing you to go to the bathroom. But what do you do when you have something in the dark? You let it out, and when you do that, the sun can shine on the thing, and the petals can open, and now it can go back in your heart, facing the right direction. So, yeah, so that's transgender, but that's everybody. So that's why I love that.
Makes him cry.
Oh.
My friends, thank you so much for joining the stage with me today.
Thank you,
You're
Tim.
beautiful. I went over a little bit, so I just want to do 2 audience questions if we could. Is that okay? Does anyone have an audience question? I have time for 2. I went over a little bit, but...
This mic, if anyone's got a question.
Hi. Big fan of this book, and both of you. I have a philosophical question. I have ruminated a lot over the notion of, like, how we bring together dismantling the gender binary with feminism. And because there are ways in which they kind of can conflict against each other, and it's like, what would be your ideal vision of what's like the opposite of turfism, essentially?
Anything but turfism.
What would that
So-
look
no,
like?
People,
seriously.
can you explain what that is?
Yeah.
TERF, trans-exclusionary radical feminism, which is in some ways, if there are people on the right who are making no room for people like me, they're also supposedly progressive women who would also say that you can't be a woman, you know, unless it's a very essentialist way. If you're not born female, you can't be female. And what's true is that my experience of being female was never going to be the same as Jodi's. You know, I can't get pregnant. I've never had a period, and that's that. But there are a lot of women who can't get pregnant. In fact. There are a lot of women. There's some women who've never had a period. To be a woman doesn't mean any one thing, and to be a man doesn't mean any one thing.
Right.
And so, what we have to do is to make room in our hearts for there to be lots of different ways of being human, because that's who we are.
And I also think there is an inherent sense of threat in the community that you're talking about, these TERFs. So what they tend to say is calling Jenny a woman, because to them she is a biological man. That's what they would say. You do not look like a biological
drone?
man to me. Yeah, you're a drone.
Right, so the royal jelly.
But seriously, like what they feel is that calling Jenny a woman makes them feel less womanly because of all the struggle that women have had to get where they are. I can tell you, I am a woman. I was born a woman. I stayed a woman. Jenny's existence in no way threatens mine. And in fact, I think it informs how strong women can be. And I think they're missing that very critical point. And the other thing they bring up is that having allowing trans women into the community of women invites, again, men to have acts of violence against women. They say that these trans women are just men that want to get into safe spaces for women. That's a hard thing to fight, because I do have extreme compassion for anybody who has been in any kind of abusive relationship or who has been hurt by a man. And in fact, that is why Olivia in this book winds up has been in an abusive relationship in the past. That was very intentional of me. Yeah. And I think that what they are again missing is that a trans woman is far more likely to be harmed by a man than a cis woman is, a cisgender woman. So in part, I think it's debunking their rhetoric because it's not true. And like Jenny says, it's realizing that the term woman is a very big umbrella that a lot of people can fit under.
I have time for one more question.
Hi. In light of the whole topic, I recently read Starry Messenger by Neil deGrasse Tyson, and his chapters I never read anything by him, are great. But what's wonderful, when he talks about skin color and race, there's a whole spectrum. We've been raised calling it black or white, but when you put the whole spectrum of people, there's great gradient. I can't pronounce that. There's a gradient line. Yeah. Okay, so you're not people aren't black. Some are darker than others, but he also has a chapter on sex, gender, and in his progressive thinking, it's just like anthropology, things progressing, that we've bought into this definition, you have to be this or that. But in his world, with molecules and everything changing, that there are different grades, or a gradient line of transitioning, that some people end up not totally at either end of the spectrum. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a progressive way of viewing it and accepting that rather than judging those that aren't just like you.
Well, I think it's worth noting that the natural world contains lots of examples of creatures that change gender,
Yeah.
creatures that change sex. And it's a thing that we see in many both plants and animals that for whom this happens. And also, we should know the natural world is full of wonders. You know, there's blue lobsters. There's the Venus flytrap. There's the duck-billed platypus. And surely, if there is room in the world for all of that, there's room for me, right? And also, can I just also say, Neil deGrasse Tyson's boss at Columbia University is the chair of the astrophysics department at Columbia University, and she is a trans woman.
That's cool. That's awesome. I want to say one more thing too, that because I like to have the last word.
Of course.
But
Yeah.
most people in this audience are not trans, but none of you are who you used to be. All of you, at some point in your lives, imagined you would take a different path and did not wind up there. Every single one of you, every 80 to 100 days, every cell in your body is reborn. So are you the same person you used to be, or are you constantly becoming a better version of yourself?
And we look in the mirror. Tell me if this has happened to you. Do you look in the mirror? I mean, I'm turning 65 next week, and I look in the mirror, and I'm like, who the hell is that?
Yeah.
and not just like being trans, but also, I came out as trans 25 years ago. I was like a fairly young-looking woman at one point. And so we have to make peace with who we've been and to find a connection between who we are now and who we've been. And one of the ways we do that is through story, right? Through the stories we tell ourselves about our lives. And this is how we make sense of the weird chaos of life. We tell a story.
And the things that you have in common with everyone are a lot greater and more important than the things that make us different.
She got the last word.
We're going to be here all night, I think.